It's about damn time.
You big dummy.
That is blasphemous.
Boots to asses.
All right, everybody, what's going on? This is the Philly Experience Podcast. Great to be back with everybody today. Joined, as always, by Tanner Gilmartin and Tyre Hood. I'm your host, Max Gretzula. Guys, a ton to get to today. Phillies, Eagles, maybe even a little Sixers. Obviously, we want to start with the Birds as the season comes to an end here. We want to touch on Hurts, obviously getting the start this weekend against the Saints. Touch on Dave Dombrowski as well, getting hired by the Phillies. And maybe a little preseason talk for the Sixers as they get ready to start their season on December 23rd.
Enough is enough. Start playing with some jam in here. Let's go.
So let's roll into this, T. I want to get your thoughts. We all saw it on Gridiron Films. All the missed plays, all the issues, a few good plays, but for the most part, another underperforming day by the Eagles this past Sunday. So going forward here against a Saints team who is probably the best in the NFC so far this season, a 10-2 record with a backup quarterback in Taysom Hill, who has shown signs of improvement from previous seasons, obviously getting more opportunity in the passing game with Drew Brees being hurt with that rib injury. So what are your expectations for, I guess, Jalen Hurts just in his first start? I would assume that, he's going to be in there the whole game. I don't expect Wentz to overtake him at any point or have any packages even, because we saw earlier in the season as it's gone on, Hurts had a few packages. He would play a few downs, but I don't expect Wentz to see the field in this one. How about you?
So in terms of my expectations, to answer your first question, my expectations are low for Jalen Hurts, and I'm going to be honest with you guys. He's a young kid. He's a rookie coming in. Yeah, he made a few flashy plays, but when you look at the stat line just about equaled out to what Carson Wentz did. The difference is Jalen Hurts did that in one quarter, where it took Carson Wentz an entire first half to do all those things. So I guess that's one thing that you can kind of look up to. What I do expect, though, is Here's one major difference between Jalen Hurts and Carson Wentz going into this game, and I think that's going to be the ultimate difference maker, and it's the way they make plays with their legs. So Carson Wentz, he really doesn't have a really good pocket presence. I've addressed that on the many Gridiron Films episodes. Like it's one of those things where it frustrates me, because for a fifth-year quarterback, you kind of expect a fifth-year quarterback to have that kind of timing and that kind of awareness in the pocket at this point, and he just doesn't have it this season. He's never really had it. As a matter of fact, if you go back and look, even during that 2017 year, for the most part, that offensive line moved, and it kind of helped Carson Wentz, open up those passing lanes for him. So, the thing with Jalen Hurts coming into this game is the fact that he can extend plays with his legs. Not only that, but he can evade the pressure, as we've seen on one scramble drill earlier last week against the Green Bay Packers, where nobody was open down the field. And I highlighted this on Gridiron Films. Nobody was open, so he just said, screw it, I'll take it, I'll do it my damn self, and he ran for about 10 yards. And that's one of the major differences between Jalen Hurts and Carson Wentz, is that, Carson Wentz, all while being a great athlete, Jalen Hurts has the wheels, those wheels that's missing from Carson Wentz's game. So
T, remember Wentz was just this same way before getting injured. He liked getting out of the pocket and running. And, you mentioned it. He's a big athlete. He's athletic. And he did like to run out there, but he did learn his lesson when he dove over there to the goal line against the Rams. He learned his lesson the hard way, and that's what I'm scared to see happen to Jalen Hurts, especially with this awful offensive line and their inability to protect the quarterback. So I'm going to let you go on your point. I just want to remind everyone that Carson Wentz was the same way in the beginning of his career.
That's a good point, and you definitely bring up a good point, but I think one difference is with Jalen Hurts is that, as you've seen against the Green Bay Packers game, he's not afraid to let it go. He's not going to hold on to that football, that 30-plus yard bomb to Jalen Reagor down the sideline. He did not hold on to that ball. He noticed that, Jalen Reagor was one-on-one, and there was no safeties deep, so he just automatically threw it. He did not hesitate. He did not hold on to the football. Carson Wentz, that's one of Carson Wentz's cardinal sins. So I do expect the ball to come out quickly. I am hoping and I am praying that a run game to help out Jalen Hurts in this game is established, because you cannot throw a young quarterback into this messed up situation and not run the football. And especially when you have Miles Sanders, who's averaging 6+ yards a carry this season. Like, are you kidding me right now? Like, this coaching staff gives up so easily on the run. It's annoying to me at this point, and it infuriates me. So I hope the run is established for Jalen Hurts in this game going forward.
Yeah, I definitely think it will be. You would expect some changes, not just with the quarterback, but the offense as a whole. And I know that the Saints have a top 3 rushing defense in the league, but at the same time, you're right. You have to establish the run, and you really have to show the Saints defense different looks. They probably come in thinking they're going to throw the Eagles are going to throw the football a lot, but at the same time, you have to be prepared and really. The problem is, I guess I want to point out here, is that the defense is so good that will you be able to establish the run? Because you have guys up front that defense as a whole in New Orleans is really talented. So what do you expect with Hurts here? Do you expect him to have a performance that, as far as you want to see more of him going forward? Do you think he's going to struggle? What are your expectations with him personally as far as his own individual performance?
I need everybody under the sound of my voice to understand this. Jalen Hurts is not going to come in to save this season. This season is done. It's cooked. All right? It's over. Put a fork in it. All right? The fat lady is singing. Okay? This season is done. All right? I need everybody to understand that. So at this point, we just need to be evaluating talent, honestly, at this point. So with Jalen Hurts coming into this game, coming into this situation with a banged-up offensive line, receivers that can't get open, and the offensive coaching staff that refuses to run the football, I'm sorry, but you need to tamper down your expectations for Jalen Hurts. All right? He's really coming into a messed-up situation. If you think he's going to come in and be like a Russell Wilson in his rookie season, you're sadly mistaken. I just don't see that scenario happening. So I need everybody kind of just tamper their expectations down.
Yeah, for me, I'm really excited to see Jalen Hurts out there for 4 quarters, hopefully. But I don't think he's going to be awful, even though the Saints are one of the best defenses in the league. And we do have an awful offensive line. But I think Jalen Hurts is going to play. He's going to impress us. Some plays you're going to remember that he obviously is a rookie. And you can't forget that he did not play any preseason games. So this is a completely different situation than all other seasons. For one thing, we have Carson Wentz, who some of us thought was our franchise quarterback. And then, the whole situation with drafting Jalen Hurts in the 2nd round. And then you have this, the Flames got bigger for this controversy of the quarterback, because now Jalen Hurts comes in against the Packers and he throws a touchdown, and he's looking pretty well. But I don't think we see him come out against the Saints and really impress us so much that we're like, wow, here's our next franchise quarterback. I think we're going to like some things. Maybe he throws for, just over 200 yards, maybe just 1 touchdown. He probably throws an interception, maybe even a Malcolm Jenkins for him coming home to the link. But yeah, I don't think this is going to be a blowout game either. I think that the Eagles are going to keep with the Saints. I remember a few years ago, the Saints absolutely destroyed us, and it was terribly embarrassing. I don't think that's the way that this week is going to go against the Saints. I think it's going to be a classic Eagles game with keeping it close until the end where they blow it, or you think they have a shot with seconds left in the game, and then lo and behold, a fumble, interception, bad play call, something along those lines.
Now, I don't know about you guys, but I've heard some fans say that they actually want Jalen Hurts to bomb so bad because they want Howie Roseman out so bad that, they don't want this thing to even look good at all. And I'm sorry, I just can't get along with that. Do I dislike Howie Roseman with a passion in the sports world right now? Yes, I do. I think he does need to get fired at the end of the season because, honestly, this quarterback controversy has been brought on by him and the rest of the staff, whoever was involved in this pick. So, yes, I am highly disappointed in Howie Roseman, but at the same time, you can't wish ill will on this kid. I'm sorry. He's walking into a bad situation that I wouldn't even wish my worst enemy on.
Yeah, the thing is, there's no film on him, right? There's no film on him, so you would expect him to have some success.
He's going to have a little bit of success, no doubt about it. It's just that, he's not walking into an ideal situation where he's like a Dak Prescott and he comes in with an all-pro running back in his rookie season in a wall of China called the offensive line. And pretty decent receivers. So, like I said, he's really coming into a messed up situation. So my expectations are kind of low.
Yeah, for what you brought up against with people wanting Jalen Hurts to bomb in this, that would put us in an even worse situation because now we're going into the draft with maybe even a top 5 draft pick, and then now you have to maybe even focus on drafting another quarterback if Jalen Hurts bombs, and that is a terrible situation for us, especially considering the money that we pay Wentz. And it just wouldn't be realistic to cut Wentz. I've seen some situations where it could make sense, maybe. And of course, I've seen 5 teams that would be interested in a trade for Carson Wentz. Of course, the Colts are always going to be mentioned. You got the Chicago Bears. And I even saw the Patriots, which made me so disgusted because that would be really hard to root for Carson Wentz if he's on the Patriots. But yeah, back to that, it would put this team in an awful situation if Jalen Hurts bombs and then Carson gets back in there and he sucks too. And yeah, that would be terrible.
Yeah,
I think I learned my lesson. With these Eagles. I'm definitely not picking them to win. I've said that a few weeks in a row, trying to get some luck here and see if they can.
It's funny to me too.
Definitely not going with this with it this week. I think because of the fact that Hurts doesn't have any film on him, I think he'll have some success. But ultimately, the Saints are just too much of a powerhouse on both sides of the ball to pull out a dub here. But I want to flip it over to the other side of the coin, talk about Carson Wentz and his future. Do you guys? I think we can all agree that it's time to bench him. I think his head is so messed up at this point, starting back when they drafted Jalen Hurts and having to watch Foles go on and win a Super Bowl without him. So there's just been so accumulating over time to really mess with him mentally. As coach probably doesn't even him because he comes out in the media this week and says he wants to get Hurts some easy passes, keep the offensive line from harming him in any way. And what I mean by that is
people what they want to see.
Overpower the offensive line and just sack them. So he comes out and says a few questionable things because you could argue that why doesn't he do the same things for Wentz? Have him get some easy passes, his easy screen looks, easy, passes, dump offs out of the backfield, just warm them up to the offense. But going forward here, you can't trade Wentz because it's going to result in around a $34 million cap hit. So people out there who want to trade Carson and jump to those conclusions, you got to realize that this isn't the MLB, this isn't the NBA. These contracts work differently in the NFL, and you can't just trade them.
Not to cut you off.
A draft pick.
Not to cut you off real quick, Max, but releasing him would cause more damage than it would be if we were to trade him.
Agreed.
Now, at least with trading him,
we got to think about.
I will say this. Even with trading him, you can work out a deal to where maybe the other team, whoever you're trading him to, you can kind of work out a deal where it won't be as big of a cap hit on you.
Depending on if they take the salary. But right now, with his value so low, I don't think there's a single team in the league that would take on any of that salary and probably force the Eagles to pay all of it, if not most of it. But that's the thing. We're going forward here, Carson Wentz. What are your decisions here? What do you think going forward? I think we can all agree you can't trade him unless out of the blue a team decides they want to take on like half of his contract. So for me personally, and then I'll throw it to you guys, you probably either have to bring in a new coach and get a whole new system going to fix Carson Wentz mentally. Physically, he's been healthy this year, thank God. But I think you got to bring in a new coach for next season. And me personally, I think I definitely want Jalen Hurts to succeed. But I just feel like if you're going to get a new GM here and really tear down the whole situation, you want Hurts to succeed. And then I'd probably use him as a trade chip in the offseason to try to get a high pick. That's just me personally. I want to hear what you guys have to say about it.
Yeah, real quick. I have the numbers right here. Wentz is currently set to have a cap hit of $34.6 million in 2021. Cutting him would move the cap up to $59.2 million and put the Eagles at around $89 million over cap. All right, so they won't be releasing it would not be in their best interest to release Wentz, but I agree with the benching of Carson Wentz. And I came across some stats that just, eyebrow-raising stats that I understand why you bench Carson Wentz. Obviously, he's not playing well. I just don't understand why so late. Why this late into the season? And I was not in agreement. Carson should have got benched 2 weeks ago. Really need to get benched. Eagles have allowed 53 sacks. This doesn't have a lot to do with him. All right. He does hold on the ball a lot of line. The Eagles have allowed 53 sacks, ninth most in NFL history games. Since sacks became an official NFL stat in 1982.
What?
These are just Eagle stats in general. And here's a Carson Wentz stat. Carson Wentz, the first Eagle quarterback with a passer rating under 76 in 5 straight games since in 2005. Correct. And then this is the first have scored 17 or fewer points in 4 straight games since 2005. So this is looking a lot like the 2005 team. And,
It's
Jake.
ridiculous.
Man, this team.
T, let me ask you this question here because I want to point out real quick, Tanner, not to cut you off. I'm sorry to cut you off. But I want to point out this real fast to answer your question. I think it is the money. The money is the issue there. I don't know who's calling the shots behind closed doors. Is it the coach? Is it the GM? But ultimately, when you're paying a quarterback $128 million on his contract, you don't want to come in, week 7 and be like, okay, you're benched, because that just looks bad from, whole organization standpoint, whether it be the coach, the quarterback, even because his play is horrible, and also the GM as well. So I think that's what's brought it to this point. I think because the Giants have now a little bit of a cushion out there in first place, along with the Washington football team, now's the opportunity to say, well, we're back in the division pretty far. We also still have to play Dallas. I know, we're nitpicking here, 3rd, 4th place, who really cares? But at the end of the day, I think now is the time, because you only have 4 games left in the season. You want to see what you at least having a guy have some tape on him for other teams to see as well. Because as offseason comes, I'm a clean house. And I said, because the Phillies just got a new president, the Sixers bring in Morey in this past offseason, 2 guys in their industries who have had previous success of winning consistently. Now it's the Eagles' turn. Where do the Eagles go from here? Is Jeffrey Lurie going to be an aggressive enough owner to really pull the trigger on this whole situation and not tear it down? Because I still think there's a few pieces here that are going to remain. But here's the thing: 2 quarterbacks on this team with the amount of issues we have surrounding it, it's just a horrible look.
I will say,
I can't forgive Howie Roseman for that. T, I'm sorry, I just can't.
I will say this though, Max. Honestly, he probably does need to tear it down. This thing needs a total rebuild, because of the simple fact that ever since the Super Bowl, you have failed to bring in talent that is adequate enough to return you to the Super Bowl status that you were trying to accomplish. All right. This team has failed miserably in doing that, in terms of drafting young talent, in terms of bringing in talent from free agency, in terms of overpaying for, overpriced free agents who really overstayed their welcome here. All right. For example, all right, and I'm about to go on a total huge rant about this. Alshon Jeffrey, what is the point of having him here and having him playing on the field at this point? All right. People been asking, why is Travis Fulgham not being played? Why is Travis Fulgham all of a sudden fall off the face of the earth? Because his snaps are going to Alshon Jeffrey.
No, that's a GM point, T. It's not the coach's fault. I'm sure that Doug is getting word from Howie Roseman to play him. I don't think Doug would just play Alshon Jeffrey just because he's talented, because obviously there's a lack in production there. You definitely want to see Fulgham get the opportunities. But my point is, you're going to have Lane Johnson healthy next season, probably the top 5 right tackle, if not top 3 in the league. You're going to have Brandon Brooks hopefully back. I know he's coming off of major injury, but you'll have your whole right side of the offensive line back. Hopefully you can convince Jason Kelce to play another year or 2 in the NFL. And then you get Andre Dillard back, which is a big question mark, because at the end of the day, you have a pretty solid defensive line. I know Brandon Graham, he's having a good season. His contract's going to be up soon. Derek Barnett, you have a big question there. What are you going to do with him in the offseason? But you have Hargrave, you have Fletcher Cox, Malik Jackson. So you have a good defensive front, which I think is one of the more important things. You have, and I'm not going to say good, because it has underperformed this year too. But here's my point is, you have depth, and that's a big thing in this league. And especially you have people with track records. You have Malik Jackson, who has success. Hargrave has had success. Maybe we fire the defense coordinator Schwartz and get a new system in here. But we have talented players on that defensive line. You can't deny that.
In terms of I
want to point out real quick to Andre Dillard, like I mentioned previously, that's 4 out of 5 pieces on the offensive line. Me personally, if I'm building a football team, I don't start with the quarterback. I start with the lines, because if you don't have an offensive line, it doesn't matter if you have Zeke. It doesn't matter if you have Saquon. It doesn't matter if you have Patrick Mahomes. he might be an exception because how great he's been early in his career. But at the end of the day, my point is you need to have a good offensive and defensive line to win.
I'm definitely not going to deny you there. You know, I'm the biggest lineman guy that you will ever find. And you know, I will get those guys back on.
What do you think about
sides.
that, though? What do you think about if the guys come back healthy,
though,
if you have a good defensive line and a good offensive line, you
here's
have a foundation there. Now that's where you build around it. You know, I wish that Douglas panned out. I wish that Sidney Jones panned out because you wouldn't have had to pay Slay $60 million, you know, so that's an issue too. But what do you think? Are you at least from a building block perspective, are you at least fine and mentally with where this team is on the lines going into the next season?
In terms of the offensive line, I'm not. And here's the thing. Okay, we're going to get Lane Johnson back, a healthier Lane Johnson. I can rock with that. He's 30, 31 years old. Brandon Brooks, on the other hand, this is his second season-ending injury that he's had with us. I'm a little concerned about that at this point. So I think that's a question mark. Jason Kelce has been kind of underperforming this year. And also, you know, his play is also declining as well. No matter how smart he is, his play is declining. So I'm concerned about that as well. Y'all know how I feel about Isaac Seumalo. Y'all know I really don't care for him. And
he's terrible.
So the only solid part I can see are my tackles. Left tackle, I'm good. I'm not confident in Andre Dillard, but I am confident in Jordan Mailata. All right, now at right tackle, I am confident in Lane Johnson. Now I got to worry about my interior offensive line. I have to rebuild that again. Okay, so let's say you go into next year with Isaac Seumalo still at left guard. Okay, that's fine. You still have to address the center position and the right guard position and build depth from there because you kind of sort of you didn't really feel that very good.
Right.
As a matter of fact,
do you agree with the depth thing? We have Jack Driscoll, right? We're going to have Dillard back healthy. We're going to have Mailata, you know, so we're going to have about 7 O-linemen who have NFL experience. Hopefully we don't have to play the Matt Pryors of the world. Hopefully we don't have to play the Nate Herbigs of the world is my point.
My thing is we have some depth, but it's not depth that I would necessarily be confident in. Like, it's injuries. That's what it is. You know, is Brandon Brooks going to come back and be strong?
Yeah.
Is and that's my big thing. Now, in terms of the defensive line, they have definitely underperformed. Now, this is the unit that probably hasn't been hampered by injuries as much, but yet and still they continue to underperform. And I'm sorry, this got to be the top 5 most paid defensive line in the NFL, and they continue to underperform. They continue to get beaten off of the line of scrimmage. All right, they continue to get beaten up. Where are my sacks at? I'm sorry. Like, I pay this defensive line too much money for y'all to be underperforming like this. Fletcher Cox, I am highly disappointed.
Fletcher Cox, Malik Jackson, and Javon Hargrave. All the money, all the cap space put into 3 of those guys.
I invested in a first-round draft pick and Derek Barnett. I invested a first-round draft pick in him, and yet and still he's underperformed all 5 seasons. Why should I have any inclination to bring him back? All right, Brandon Graham, who's kind of sort of woken up at this point in his career, just got a new contract, so he's with us for another 2 years. But how long is that play gonna last? So for real, this defensive line that we keep piping up, we pay them to be good, but are they good? No. I'm sorry. Like I just have very little confidence in this defensive line unless there's a coaching change that's going to happen that can maybe bring the best out of these guys. Because right now I'm not seeing the effort on the field.
Yeah, the coaching is the key.
Like I'm not seeing it, guys. I'm not seeing it in the film sessions. Go ahead, Tanner.
Now back to this question about the offensive line before too involved in the depth. The remaining games of the season, and with Jason Peters out for the season with that toe surgery. So I am completely worried about this offensive line going forward, and I think that's where the draft needs to go. And unfortunately, you don't need the draft picks because we have so many positions to express about. But I think maybe second round you start, starting back with starting to build the line back up.
Yeah, that
I agree.
On both sides.
I agree with that wholeheartedly. I think one thing I want to point out that I caught on Gridiron Films is the linebacking core and how poor it is, how out of place Alex Singleton was. After I sat here, I stuck up for Alex Singleton. I said he had a great game, not a great game. He had a good game against Seattle that was pretty productive. He's been our leading tackler once or twice this year. But, I mean, geez, right when Hurts is trying to bring us back in the game, he stabs us in the back. He's way out of position on the Aaron Jones run. and he goes 75 yards to the house. I mean, stuff like that just can't happen. You can't come from the CFL and start for the Eagles at linebacker in the NFL. I'm sorry. And that's not Alex Singleton. I'm not blaming him because of the decision to put him on the team. It's the general manager, and that's why I think where this starts at. I know Doug, he's had questionable – I mean, the whole season. Listen, we've been Eagles fans our entire lives. The whole season has been one of the worst in memory that we can remember. But overall, everything needs to be changed. There needs to be a complete overhaul of the situation. You have a quarterback who you're tied to, you're married to. We've stated that. And because of that, he's not going anywhere, right? Because before all this happened, we were trying to figure out, okay, Wentz, Doug, Howie, who are you keeping? Where's the priorities at? Wentz, by default, is your quarterback going forward. I know Hurts, we want to see what he has, but there's no getting – you're not going to bench Carson Wentz. So my point is, I don't care what people say. I don't care how great Jalen Hurts plays. We're having Carson Wentz start the season in 2021. Now, what he does with it, that remains to be seen. But Jalen Hurts is not going to be the starting quarterback of the Eagles after this season. And we can bring this recording back up in the future, too.
Yeah, I can't.
Because here's the thing. He's not. I know we all probably want him to be. We want to give him a shot. But we just have too much money wrapped up in Wentz. So the thing is, you need to bring a new coach in because this coach obviously is not working well with Wentz and Doug Peterson. The GM, just based on the fact that it has nothing to do with Wentz, it has the fact that what has he done to help Wentz? And that the answer to that is not much. He brings it. In fact, you heard him. He brings in Jalen Hurts to mess with his head mentally. No one really believes in him. You know, when your coach doesn't believe in you, he looks to his right, his coach doesn't believe in him. When he looks to his left, his GM doesn't believe in him. When he looks behind him, he's got a quarterback breathing down his neck to take his job. So really, he's got to look in the mirror and say, who has my back? Nobody in the organization really does. Does Jeffrey Lurie even have his back? We don't know what's going on behind closed doors, but it's just a shame. But at the end of the day, he's going to be the starter next season. And I agree with Tanner's point. This draft is huge for us coming up, and we need a new GM in here because we know that Howie Roseman has little success in the past drafting, period. And we need to draft a wide receiver, and I don't care what round it is. I prefer to be a good one, you know, and not take a flyer like Howie Roseman did on Wes Watkins and John Hightower. I want a guy that's established from college football, maybe Power 5 school, and not like maybe the North Dakota State / you know, maybe even Boise State where John Hightower came from. Come on, you know, take somebody from the SEC when in doubt. I see Devontae Smith at Alabama. I see Jamar Chase with Joe Burrow. I know he opted out this season, but at the end of the day, listen, you need a receiver, you need a linebacker. Those are my two biggest issues right now. I know, T, you got questions with the offensive line, and I agree with that. You know, obviously there is questions because of the injuries. How are people going to come back? But for you guys moving into this draft going forward, and Tanner, I'll throw it to you first. Do you agree with the assessment that Jamar Chase, Devontae Smith, is your priority here lay in the hands of a wide receiver, even though we just took one in the first round last year?
I think it has to. But also it depends on how Jalen Hurts does with the remainder of the season. Because I don't think Jalen Hurts is going to establish himself as a franchise quarterback at the end of this season. But I think if Carson Wentz starts doing so terribly next season in the beginning too, and we have the same situation, I think that they're going to need to keep that in mind while drafting in this draft and figure out the players that their quarterback that they think that they're going to go to in the future is going to have a nice setup. And we're mentioning Howie Roseman and his mistakes at drafting. And I don't think we're going to get a different draft unless we have a different guy, a different GM drafting. And just to go back, Jordan Matthews, we selected him over Devontae Adams.
That was Chip Kelly.
JJ Arcega-Whiteside over, this is as a team, the drafting for wide receivers. JJ Arcega-Whiteside over DK Metcalf, and of course Jalen Reagor over Justin Jefferson, who we all assumed that I personally assumed that we were going to get Justin Jefferson with the other one wide receivers going off the board. And I thought that's who they said. They said Jay, and then I thought, here's Justin Jefferson, but Jalen Reagor, some guy that I've barely even heard of before.
And I will go on record as saying this. I said that, I didn't think Justin Jefferson was the right pick. I did say that, and I swore up and down that he was just a slot receiver. But, man, he has lit up the NFL. His route running is crisp for somebody of his experience in the NFL, and his ability to get open by himself is bar none some of the most beautiful thing I have ever seen. So I'm going to give myself one of these.
You big dummy.
I'll take that gracefully.
Well, I'll tell you, it happens to the best of us. I'm going to state an unpopular opinion right now, and that I could argue is that Miles Sanders wasn't a good pick either. One, because not that he's not talented, but because of the fact that we haven't even used him, right? We're only using him with 8 to 10 carries a game. I much rather have a proven second-round linebacker to help out, T.J. Edwards and Alex Singleton, because that core is just absolutely abysmal. And also on top of that, you don't need to have a solid running back or, first, second-round running back to win in this league. I'd much rather have a solid right guard, a solid center, a tackle, something, because you need depth at those positions. We won a Super Bowl with LeGarrette Blount, with Corey Clement, with Jay Ajayi, like we've mentioned before. And I just don't think at the time, even I knew Miles Sanders was talented, so that's why I didn't hate the pick. But I knew there was other needs that we should have acquired at the draft. I mean, you look later on, not in that specific draft, but you have Alvin Kamara, 3rd-round pick. And I want to point out even Myles Gaskin with the Dolphins this year, a 7th-round pick. I mean, you just don't draft running backs high. Look at Zeke this year. Yeah. When he doesn't have an offensive line, he's having his worst season of his career. So it doesn't matter who your running back is. You don't take one that high. You invest in the cornerback position. You invest in the pass rushing position. And you invest in the O-line first, and then you got to hit. That's why you're getting paid the GM. You got to hit on those 4th, 5th-round picks, and hopefully get talent that way. And then that's when you have free agency. You don't go into the offseason, throw all your money on the table for Darius Slay, because you're just making up for issues you couldn't succeed in the draft with those corner positions.
Yeah, right. I agree with you, Max. I think that wide receivers should be top priority over running backs, because I feel like any draft you can find a running back who's going to put up good production for a team, whether it's, for a couple years, just to name a few guys, not considering their rounds or something, but you can come across a Jonathan Taylor type player. And as you mentioned, like a Miles Gaskin,
David Montgomery, 3rd-round.
Yeah,
pick,
exactly.
Devin
Just those guys.
Singletary.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think even
just
Boston,
classic running back guys that are going to do the job for you when you need them to.
I think even Boston
Scott.
Scott
Thing is hitting.
Boston Scott was like a 5th, 6th-round pick. So yeah, you're right.
Yeah,
later on
is hitting on like a DeAndre Hopkins. Obviously, you got to focus on more like that. To Devontae, not like maybe even a Devontae Parker type wide receiver. It's just I put wide receivers above the running backs because there's just so many more talented running backs coming out of college all the time. And it's harder to hit on that wide receiver, especially for this team.
Well, I agree wholeheartedly. Yeah. Well, listen, I want to wrap up this Eagles point here, but I want to get your thoughts going forward as far as what positions. I know we're harping here, but I think as a line, and we're going to have our draft board coming up as the winter, we go through it. And as the spring comes and the draft comes, we're going to get you guys the draft board and our picks, so don't have to worry about that. But when you go, and I know you haven't started yet, but when you go to put that draft board together, what are like the top 2 or 3 positions you're looking at for the season? Because you expect, and I know there's so many question marks here. That's why it's hard, because we don't know if the coach is going to be here. We don't know if the GM is going to be here. We don't know what the quarterback situation is going to be like, and those are the 3 most important things in an organization. So I know I'm throwing you a curveball here, but what are your 2 or 3 positions in need as we stand right now going forward?
I tell you something right now, as the offseason is almost coming towards us. There's actually 3 positions that I'm going to start looking at, and I'm going to start looking at film with. First, got to be linebacker. You have got to address linebacker. All right, you don't just need one linebacker. You need 2. All right, you're in a horrible position right now in terms of linebacker. You're going to need 2 linebackers. That's first and foremost. And another thing, you touched on Darius Slay earlier, which brings me to my number 2 position. You're going to need another outside corner. I pointed it out in Gridiron Films. Avonte Maddox is trash on the outside. I'm sorry. He cannot. All right, he can't even cover, man. That man cannot cover himself with a blanket when he's cold at night. All right, that's how bad he is at covering wide receivers on the outside. He can't do it. All right, he gets burned constantly. So it doesn't help that Darius Slay doesn't have any help on the other side of him. All right, and speaking of Darius Slay, he's really a number 2 corner now. He cannot cover the top wide receivers anymore. He does not have that talent anymore.
I think he's proven that over the last few weeks too.
He doesn't. So you're gonna need another outside corner to complement Darius Slay at this point. In my number 3 position, you need a pass rusher. I know I'm leaning heavy
T going
defense
all
here.
defense.
I know I'm leaning heavy defense here, but you're going to need the pass rusher because of the simple fact that, okay, these DTs, they haven't proven anything to me. Okay, Brandon Graham, okay, I'll give you that. He's playing out of his mind this year.
Another year he'll be here.
But Derek Barnett has given me nothing, and he's on the last year of his contract. So who's going to be behind him? Are you going to put Josh Sweat out there? Like, come on now. Like, this pass rush needs to you need to give this pass rush a boost. Seriously. Do I agree with the fact that we need another wide receiver? Oh, yeah, I think we do. Definitely. Yes.
Now see, this is my point, and I'm going to throw it to Tanner for his 3, but you're going to need those positions, but you're also going to need a receiver, like you said. So we're going to have to hit on some of those players in free agency, and not only the draft, but yes, free agency as well. So Tanner, what about you? Are you leaning heavy D here? Or are you leaning more towards a wide receiver maybe as your top priority?
No, I'm not, just for the fact that the last couple seasons we've been drafting wide receivers and it hasn't worked for us. So I think free agency might be I don't know who's going to be on the board free agency wise, and I'm sure we're not gonna hit on that either. But for me personally, I think we need to play this draft a little different than what we've been playing. I think we should keep in mind the positions that we need to draft. But if there's someone on that draft board that should have got drafted top 5, and we're in the second round and he's still there, draft him. Yeah, because I'm tired of the Eagles passing on guys because they have one guy in mind.
I hear you.
Just play it how teams play that draft after us. They're like, oh, the Eagles, they're definitely going to draft this guy. He's good, Justin Jefferson. And then the Vikings see Justin Jefferson still on the board. They draft him. That's exactly how I think that we should draft. If we're looking for a linebacker and the top cornerback is still left on the board, draft the cornerback. Go ahead. And then draft the linebacker next round. And then maybe in the third round, you draft a wide receiver. But top priority is drafting the best player in the draft, either cornerback or linebacker. And I don't want them to stick with one guy in mind and have, this guy, he in college, blah, 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 he did this and I don't like him because of that. No, draft him. If he's one of the best players in college, draft him. I don't care. Even if he's a wide receiver, even if there is I haven't looked much at this mock draft, right. But even still, if there's a guy that, a position that we don't quite really need top priority, if you're in the 4th round and there's, there maybe, I don't know, but if there's a good player, if there's still 2 cornerbacks left and you're on your second round, you already drafted a cornerback, draft another one.
I want winners.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's one thing that we haven't really done lately. And, we go out, we have, like we mentioned on previous shows, J.K. Dobbins there in the second round, and we have one player in mind. That's a quarterback. That's Jalen Hurts. And we skip over all that talent and we take the quarterback instead. Just an awful pick. I mean, I know Hurts is going to step in here. I'm rooting for him to do well this Sunday. But as of right now, where it stands, Jalen Reagor doesn't look to be a number 1. He's probably a number 2 slot guy in the NFL, or a deep threat also. But you're definitely going to need a number 1 wide receiver. So that's to be. Are you going to invest heavily in that D line, in the cornerback position, in a linebacker position early on, or are you going to go up there and get one of those stud wide receivers? Either way, like Tanner said, pick a stud. Pick the best guy available. It doesn't matter what position he plays, as long as it's a need. I think that's most important. Guys, I want to roll and dive into some Phillies talk here. We bring in Dave Dombrowski. I said it on last week's show.
Vargas.
That was the guy that I wanted. And I think it's pretty much because of the pedigree he's had, right? He's won a World Series in 1997 with the Miami Marlins. There was a young T back then. Then he goes out and he wins another one in 2018 with the Boston Red Sox, and also created the Detroit Tigers team back when they had Justin Verlander and Max Scherzer and Miguel Cabrera. He brought that team in basically from scratch, and he's made a couple of great trades, couple of questionable trades over his time. He brings Miguel Cabrera from Miami in his early years to Detroit, builds a solid team there, signs Justin Verlander to a big contract extension, which was great. And he's also signed a couple of guys who probably didn't pan out to big contracts, and I'm going to throw David Price's name out there. That obviously didn't work out in Boston. He's now with the Dodgers. I know we haven't heard his name in a while because he opted out this past season, but overall, I think this is a good hiring. I think John Middleton, however, he's got a lot of heat recently and probably well-deserved, but he brings in a guy with an established resume to go along with an established coach and manager in Joe Girardi. So at least he's doing the right things on his part because we didn't think he was going to, right? We thought, Ned Rice was going to roll into this offseason as our interim GM and, make decisions that he probably doesn't have the most experience, background in. So it's good to bring in Dombrowski with the pedigree. And I think moving forward here, guys, because of the fact that we haven't hit on any draft picks, that really screwed up our rebuild. Once Rollins, Utley, Howard retire, we draft Adam Hazley in 2017. We draft J.P. Crawford. We draft Scott Kingery, guys that just didn't pan out. And I think Dombrowski's in here to hopefully hit on some of those picks. I will give him credit for the Alec Boehm pick as well. But Mickey Moniak, another guy who still hasn't made his mark in the major leagues, and he's been around, 4 years now. So let's get your thoughts, both of you guys, early on here, and what your expectations are now that we actually have a guy who has experience rolling into this offseason, starting with JT Realmuto. Do you think he's back?
He did say in the press conference, I have the quote right here, there's flexibility to make moves. Is there enough to get something like that done? I'm not sure. So that's still everything's up in the air. He mentioned that, obviously he wants to win in 2021, but he's going in with, limited amount of money. This team, he said, is more than just one player away from being a championship team. You look at that awful bullpen, and that to me needs the topmost focus under signing JT Realmuto. And I don't know if that's likely possibility. There is less interest in retaining JT Realmuto because of money wise in the club. There's a lot of people that are just not behind it anymore because of money. Right. Now you look at Rhys Hoskins and obviously Bryce Harper, and I think the main focus of the roster was to build around those two players. But now going in, you see Rhys Hoskins, he kind of had a slump last season, and I wouldn't be upset seeing him leave, and especially if you get rid of him now, he has a little more value. And it's easy for Dombrowski to come here, and he doesn't have a connection really with the players. And to start moving players now, it is easier for him. But I think that, and he said it too, that this team is more than just one player away, and it's not a rebuild, but he said it a retooling process.
Of course.
Which is basically which is basically a fancy word for it's going to take some years to get this team together. Right. Because let's be honest here, the Phillies were stacked with batters that couldn't even get runs in unless it was like a whole avalanche of runs in one game, and then the next game they would come out and only get like 1 or 2 runs. That was very frustrating. Not to mention the fact that like we've been complaining year in and year out, this bullpen was horrible. All right, this bullpen was horribly constructed. All right, they couldn't hold a lead. They couldn't come in for a starter if a starter was having a bad day. Like this team is going to take some years.
7.6 ERA.
And I completely agree with his sentiment that this isn't going to be a 1-year fix. This team isn't just 1 or 2 players away. Like, and then on top of that, like, I'm sorry, I got to take jabs at Max's boy. But when you pay somebody $330 million, you're not going to have a whole lot of money to give out to everybody else. I'm sorry. You committed that much money to one person. So it's going to be kind of hard to bring in the guys that you need, all right, to fill in this roster. Do I have confidence that he's going to do it because he has experience doing it? Yes, I do think that he is the right guy for the job. I just need Philly fans to understand that this is not going to take 1 year or possibly even 2 years. This is going to be a nice 3+ year process to really get this team where we want it to be.
Well, see, I hate to agree with you, but I think you're right. Bryce is going to make about $26 million this upcoming season. Now, you need a star player. You need somebody to build around. You need somebody to put fans in the seats. All right, it's not about just the production on the field. Bryce does more for you than just put numbers up in the stat sheet, right? Now, here's the issue I have. You have Bryce Harper here making $26 million in 2021. You have Zach Wheeler making $22 million in 2021. You have Segura making $14.5 million, and you have Nola making $11 million around there. So your top guys right off the bat are making a lot of money. So you have to look through this and say, where can we cut costs? You're not getting rid of Harper, so he's on the books. You shouldn't get rid of Wheeler. You signed him to the big contract. Pitching is a need on this team right now. I know he's making $22 million. It's a lot for a pitcher, but listen, he's got a a high percentage of fastball rate last season, and he had a good success with it also. Then you look at Nola, great signing, only $11 million. I know it's still 11, but for his talent, that's definitely a steal in my opinion going forward because you have him locked up. I know we locked him up about 2 years ago to that big contract. So yep. I'm going to say the guy who needs to go is Gene Segura, making that $14.5 million. You got to get him off the books. The thing I want to point out here is you got to get one of those, or not one, but you need more than one of those 1 million to 2 million guys, maybe in the minor leagues, to come up and really hit. You have to find diamonds in the rough here because it's not just about talent, right? When you sign some of these big time free agents to these contracts, you have to have, your prospects pan out. And that's one thing I go back to the draft. We just haven't hit on as many draft picks as we should have or could have.
I hear you.
And I throw J.P. Crawford's name in there when we draft J.P. Crawford a few years back. Tim Anderson and Aaron Judge go right after him. You take, other guys, Adam Hazley, for example. Ian Anderson goes not after him, but around his time. It is after him in the draft, but he comes in and has success in the postseason with the Atlanta Braves. So Alec Bohm and Aaron Nola are the two exceptions. Those two guys hit. You got to plug in Bohm at third base for the future. And to Tanner's point with Rhys Hoskins, I want to say this. He's not making too much money. And I think the way he's been playing the last couple seasons, when it gets to that contract extension, he's not going to command a ton of money on the market just because his performance on the field in recent years has not been productive. So I thought 2 years ago when he came on and burst onto the scene in August of 2017 and hit all those home runs, I thought, wow, we really got something here. But as the years went on, his production completely slacked. Yeah.
Well, I understand what you were saying about Rhys Hoskins, but also if it comes down to it and you're away from a trade, maybe with, I'm reaching here, but with Blake Snell and you put Rhys Hoskins there on the trade board as well for that makes the trade a little more acceptable. So what I'm saying, we could use Rhys Hoskins more than probably next year if he stinks.
I see that, but here's the thing: if you have Bohm, and I don't really buy into the whole Kingery thing at second base, but if you have Bohm and Hoskins there who can put in a good offseason of work, and you have your corners, established with JT, getting him back, I think everybody in the organization wants him back. Dave Dombrowski said from top to bottom, everybody wants him back. I think we have a good shot. I think we have a better shot now with Dombrowski in the front office. So if you can get him back behind the plate, you really have to focus on, you have obviously Harper in right field. And one name I want to, before I let T go here, one name I want to mention here that I forgot to is Andrew McCutchen. And he's on the books for $20 million in 2021. Sheesh. For a guy with Tanner and T. You guys saw it last season. His knees still aren't 100%. They're not as they used to be. He's not playing great defense out there in left field, running wise, chasing down balls into the corner. And as a leadoff hitter and as a leader, he definitely still has that, establishment in the locker room. But that's a contract you probably want to look to move and get that $20 million cleared.
My thing is this. I don't know if you guys remember me saying this, but when we were back in the studio, and I had suggested that, we move Rhys Hoskins, and a lot of you guys looked at me and was like, T, is you crazy? I'm like, no, move him. Like, move him now. Why? He has value. Move him. Like, don't hesitate. Move him now. And now we are unfortunately now in a position where his value has decreased. All right. Even if you were to trade him, you can't get the necessary value that you want in return for Rhys Hoskins anymore. So, like, my thing is this, like, it's something up with these Philadelphia organizations where they just hold on to players for too long. And I'm sorry, like, he has no value to us no more at this point. It's like you described before. We have all these other players that can do the same thing that he does now. And then his batting has decreased tremendously. He's not hitting home runs out of the ballpark anymore. So, like, I'm sorry, but you should have got rid of Rhys Hoskins a while ago, and you didn't. You kind of
the thing with Hoskins is the contract. That's why I think he stays in the Phillies uniform. And I think also, he used to be number one in Tanner's fan club, but the recent stretches of, inconsistency and underperforming, I think have crossed the line there with Tanner. And listen, I think I'm going to stick on the Rhys Hoskins bandwagon here. And part of that is the contract, but also who do you have coming up to take over the first base position? Yeah, you can throw $2 million, $5 million to a guy on a 1-year contract to come in and cover you, maybe a Logan Morrison or somebody like that for a year. But overall, I still think Hoskins has potential, and that's the reason why I still want to keep him in a Phillies uniform. I'm sorry, I want to do it. I think McCutchen, if you can get rid of him, clear the books off that $20 million contract, which I think at the time even I questioned it because you're paying a guy. What did he get? 50 or 60 million over 3
What's he
years?
here for?
It's just too much. And Segura, I like the trade just because we got rid of Carlos Santana, but in the process, we gave up on J.P. Crawford, who had a great season last year with the Seattle Mariners. So, that's why we had to sign Didi Gregorius to that $18 million contract last year. He's a guy that I probably don't expect back in a Phillies uniform. But, when you look at this and dive into it, I really think the Bryce Harper signing overshadowed what Matt Klentak did as a GM because there was just a couple of bad decisions. Signing Carlos Santana in the first place, who had the worst season of his career in his 1 year in a Phillies uniform. He goes back to Cleveland last year, performs well. He just got a big contract with the Royals this offseason. Then you have Segura on the books with $14.5 million. You don't know what to do with. Is he a shortstop? Is he a second baseman? What do you do with Gene Segura? Then you go out and you sign Andrew McCutchen, $20 million a year to play the left field. Now, I know he tears his ACL, but still, he plays the left field position, can't cover center anymore. And now he has injuries, and you're still owing him that $20 million. So you got to get rid of McCutchen, in my opinion. I love him, but I think in order to clear – because the money is the issue right now. The money is the problem. You got to clear the money. You got to get rid of Segura and trade him. You have to get rid of McCutchen. That's where I stand at this point.
Yeah, it really hurt us because the Phillies were in win now mode when they signed Bryce Harper, and they thought this team was going to be so much better. But then when it wasn't, it kind of destroyed this team because now we plugged in pieces that we think were valuable to win a championship, to win a World Series, and we didn't even get to the playoffs the last 2 years.
Right.
The guy Max Taz on his wall on a poster. He didn't, perform as we thought he would. He still played good, but he wasn't, it didn't seem to take over the team as much as it should have. I loved watching Bryce Harper first year when he was a Philly at the games. I was there to see his walk-off grand slam and all that. But going back to what you were saying about Gene Segura, I agree with moving him. And this team is in, as we mentioned with the Eagles, they're not in a good situation. And that has to do with, their farm system. And also just like how awful our offensive line is for the Eagles, our bullpen is the worst in MLB history. And that, just like Dombrowski said today, that's going to be the focal point going forward because that is a huge problem.
To wrap this up real quick, why didn't we wait on Vinny Velasquez and David Hale and Hector Neris? Why did we? Unless there was a deadline for their arbitration, I'm not sure off the top of my head.
What's he here for?
Why didn't we wait an extra week before we gave those guys contracts? Because I'm sure Dombrowski probably comes in here and says, "What is Hector Neris still doing in my locker room?"
My guess is, and this is just my estimated guess, is that they didn't know that they would get an opportunity to sign a guy like him.
Yeah, he did say that he wanted to have an expansion team in Nashville. He was solely focused on that. But John Middleton, being as aggressive as he is, starting with the Harper deal and then, calling Dave Dombrowski on the phone constantly, giving him a 4-year, $20 million deal, which we did not mention. Those are the terms in the contract for Dave Dombrowski. So moving forward, at least in this offseason, it's going to be different, probably different than in all years past because of the simple fact that people don't know with COVID and all the money situation, the contracts, not a lot of people have signed. In a normal year, we're talking about the winter meetings and GMs getting together to discuss player contracts. Probably won't have those this year, at least in person, maybe virtually. But it remains to be seen. And hopefully we can come in here and number one priority, in my opinion, still, and I think we can all agree, is re-sign JT Realmuto. So, guys, before we wrap this thing up, I want to get your opinions here on the Sixers as preseason begins tonight, actually. And the Sixers obviously don't play their preseason games just yet. They'll have 2 against the Celtics and the Pacers before the season starts. But overall, what do you guys think? What do you guys think that this team's going to do in this upcoming season? And I want to pinpoint here in your thoughts of Danny Green specifically and Dwight Howard as the veterans.
I think they bring a different presence to this locker room that they didn't have. Is one thing that I kind of wish that that these young players, Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid, had, was that constant veteran presence. It's like that year that we had JJ Redick and we had Jimmy Butler. There was a veteran presence in the locker room, and you can see that their play increased because of that. So I think with these veterans in the locker room, helping to push these guys and develop these guys' game, I think it's a huge advantage for these young guys, and I think it can only better them and better their games. I'm going to temper down my expectations. I think they're going to finish at least 4th, 5th seed this year because I still think they need to add a couple more pieces to really complement the rest of the guys. But I do like what they've done so far, putting shooters around Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid. And I like how Doc Rivers is already, having some confidence out there. He's like, hey, teams, I dare y'all to double team Joel Embiid. I like that confidence. I'm digging it.
Hey, T, don't get too comfortable with this duo, Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid, quite yet, because, of course, there's that hot topic of James Harden. What team's he going to go to?
That's true.
He was holding out on, training camp, and I know that he had to pass the next 6 COVID tests for him to go back. But he was, he was doing more activities to show the team that he purposely did not go to training camp. He went to a specific club where they do specific things.
Yeah.
And
both in Atlanta and in Vegas, right?
Stay thirsty, my friend.
But there's a lot of emotion behind this trade. It's going to be, are we giving up Joel Embiid or Ben Simmons, which I think it would work better with Joel Embiid and Harden. I believe that is makes more sense, and it would obviously make more sense for a trade because I think the Rockets would do no trade if it didn't. They wouldn't do a trade if it didn't involve Ben Simmons. That's me personally. I think we would have to give up Ben Simmons for James Harden, and that's just the way it looks. But you go back to the Rockets and how Daryl Morey unexpectedly stepped down from the Rockets, and now he's on the Sixers. And you look, do the Rockets want to trade Harden over to the Sixers, where Morey is the president? So there's drama like that stuff going on too. And we had on our story that James Harden put the Sixers as his, a top team to go to. And it's looking more and more like that. It's just whether or not the Rockets will pull the trigger on trading over James Harden, because I think the Daryl Morey is fully willing to give up Ben Simmons or Joel Embiid.
Probably, Tanner, behind closed doors. He stated that he likes the combination of Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons, but he's always loved James Harden. Yeah. He said that previously. But overall, I think one thing we have to consider here is the fact that James Harden didn't want to come to Philadelphia in the first place, right? He wanted to go to the Brooklyn Nets. Now that he's not getting his own way, he adds the Sixers there. And you have to really question if he wants to be here long term. Do you really want to give up Ben Simmons for a guy who might not even want to play in your own uniform? So don't just go out there and give up a king's ransom for James Harden.
Agreed.
He's really trying to force the hand of Houston, and they really gave him everything. He didn't want Russell Westbrook. He's gone. He didn't want Dwight Howard. He was gone. He didn't want Chris Paul. He was gone. He's really gotten everything he's demanded there in Houston, and he's still not happy. So don't just because of the fact that he's a top 3 talent in the league, throw all your chips into all your chips in the table.
I agree.
Now, this could actually go to benefit us because if James Harden still there's not a deal done and he's still holding out and he's showing the team he does not want to play for this team, they might be forced into trading him, and that'll probably work in our benefit, because then by some miracle we don't give up Ben Simmons or Joel Embiid. We give up maybe even everyone else.
Tobias Harris and get rid of that contract has always been my point.
Yep. Yeah, and that would be absolutely great, and that 100% worth it.
Even if James Harden doesn't want to stay in a Sixer uniform, you clear that money off the books for the future. Yeah. And if Harden wants to leave, fine, because you have that cap space to sign other free agents.
Yeah, then you have the opportunity for James Harden. You have Joel Embiid there. He's a personality. Maybe not a lot of players would mesh with him, but I think him and James Harden could establish a sort of bond and maybe make James Harden want to stay in Philadelphia.
Well, guys, as we wrap up the show here, I want to say Joel Embiid again saying that he is in best shape of his life and he wants to play 20 years in this league. So I think we've heard that one before, but we'll have to see how it plays out, man.
He's a father
He
now.
is.
Okay, is that
Things
supposed to
change, I
change
guess.
anything? Carson Wentz is a dad, and he started stinking up the joint. Let's be honest here.
I guess it can go both ways too.
I'm just putting that out there. I'm just saying.
That's fair.
All right. You guys missed any of this episode, you can always go to philly-experience.simplecast.com. Available on all major downloadable platforms. Also available on YouTube. I think I got a serious fear that these teams are going to give us coal for this holiday season, guys. I'm just saying.
Well, at least the Eagles. We'll see about the others.
Yeah, I got a little hope for the Sixers. But
Anybody have the Eagles winning this weekend?
huh? What?
Nah, come on, Max. We're done with that.
Yeah, I learned my lesson.
What's wrong with you?
You just got to sit back and enjoy Jalen Hurts under center.
Yeah.
At least it's a change. I don't know if it'll be a good one, but we'll see.
Yeah,
Once again, another thing to keep us watching these Philadelphia Eagles.
that's the only thing that's going to keep me watching.
Surprise, motherfucker.
Take me out, coach.
Kind of circumcising the mosquito.
I want me some glory hole.
Stay thirsty, my friends.
But they are who we thought they were.